You're listening to the Agentic Engineer Podcast, weekly AI agent intelligence for builders. I'm your host, and with me as always is my co-host. Let's get into it.
Issue 8. Anthropic shipped managed agents, turning agent infrastructure into something that looks a lot like an operating system. You see, Berkeley broke every major AI benchmark without solving a single task. And AWS launched an NPM-style registry for AI agents. Big week.
Quick rundown. Anthropic's managed agents virtualizes agent sessions, harnesses, and sandboxes into independent, swappable interfaces. If a container dies, the session survives. P50 time to first token dropped 60%.
You see, Berkeley got 100% on SW bench verified with a 10-line PyTest hook. 0 tasks solved. 0 LLM calls. The benchmarks companies cite in press releases? All exploitable.
And our tool of the week, AWS Agent Registry, now in preview inside Bedrock AgentCore. Think NPM for AI agents. Centralized discovery, versioning, governance, and compliance metadata. The big one. Anthropic published the architecture behind managed agents. And the core insight is an operating systems analogy that actually holds up.
Walk me through it.
Every team building production agents hits the same wall. You put the model, the harness, and the sandbox in one container. That container becomes a pet. If it dies, the session is gone. If it hangs, you can't debug it because user data lives in the same box.
The classic monolith problem, but for agents.
Exactly. Managed agents virtualizes 3 components into independent interfaces. A session, which is an append-only event log. A harness, which is the Claude loop that routes tool calls. And a sandbox for code execution. Each can fail or be replaced without disturbing the others.
So the analogy is, operating systems virtualized hardware into process and file abstractions. Managed agents does the same for agent infrastructure.
Right. The harness calls the container the way it calls any tool. Execute, name, input, returns a string. If a container dies, the harness catches it as a tool call error. Claude decides whether to retry. A new container spins up from a standard recipe. No more nursing failed containers back to health.
Okay, but here's what I want to dig into. The security model. Because in the old coupled design, untrusted code ran in the same container as credentials. A prompt injection only had to convince Claude to read its own environment variables.
That's the best part. Managed agents puts OAuth tokens in a vault proxy that the sandbox never touches. Git tokens get baked into the repo clone during initialization. Claude pushes and pulls without ever handling the token directly. MCP tools route through a dedicated proxy that fetches credentials from the vault per session.
That's a real architectural win. Credential isolation at the infrastructure level, not the prompt level.
And sessions solve the context window problem differently too. Instead of irreversible compaction, where you summarize and discard, the session log stores all events durably outside Claude's context window. The harness can interrogate it with get events, selecting positional slices, rewinding before specific moments. Context engineering happens in the harness layer, not in the model's memory.
I want to push back on one thing though. The post doesn't address multi-tenant isolation when multiple brains share sandbox pools. And cold start latency for the first container in a session. If you're running latency-sensitive workflows, those TTFD gains might get eaten by warm-up costs.
Fair point. The 60% P50 improvement and over 90% P95 improvement are impressive numbers. But they're measuring sessions that skip container setup entirely. Real-world numbers will vary.
Still, the architecture is sound. Cattle, not pets, all the way down. If you're building agent infrastructure, this is the reference design to study.
Quick hits. Cursor shipped version 3, codenamed Glass. Ground-up rebuild as an agent-first IDE.
Not an editor with AI bolted on. A workspace where developers manage teams of coding agents. Multiple local and cloud agents in a single sidebar. Design mode lets you select UI elements and describe changes in plain language. And a /best event command sends prompts to multiple LLMs so you can compare outputs.
The competitive context matters here. Claude Code holds roughly 54% of the AI coding market per Menlo Ventures. Cursor is betting the next phase belongs to whoever manages agents at scale, not whoever writes the most code.
Bold bet. We'll see if it pays off.
GitHub Copilot CLI now routes your code through a second model family before you commit. They're calling it Rubber Duck.
One model writes, another from a different AI family reviews. Claude Sonnet plus GPT 5.4 Rubber Duck closes 74.7% of the performance gap between Sonnet and Opus on SW Bench Pro. The biggest gains show up on hard problems spanning 3+ files and 70+ steps.
Cross-model review scoring 4.8% higher than baseline on complex tasks. That's not trivial.
Claude Code source leaked via an NPM source map. Anthropic shipped a .map file in their NPM package that referenced the complete unobfuscated TypeScript source on their R2 storage.
Community archived the entire codebase within hours. 1,900 TypeScript files, 512,000 lines, roughly 40 discrete tools with permission gating, a 46,000-line query engine, and some unreleased features behind flags. Kairos is an autonomous daemon mode. Buddy is a Tamagotchi-style AI companion.
My favorite, undercover mode, prevents Claude from revealing internal info when contributing to open-source repos. The fix was one line in .envignore. Anthropic called it a release packaging issue caused by human error.
One line. That's all it took. Dependabot alerts are now assignable to AI agents for automated remediation, not just version bumps. Agents analyze the advisory, make code changes across the project, and open a draft PR.
You can assign multiple agents to the same alert and compare their approaches. Supports Copilot, Claude, and Codex. The practical win is major version upgrades that break APIs, package downgrades when a dependency is compromised, and complex fixes outside Dependabot's rule-based engine.
And Microsoft Agent Framework hit 1.0 GA. Follow-up to our Issue 7 coverage of the release candidate.
Stable APIs for .NET and Python, native MCP tool integration, multi-agent orchestration. AutoGen is officially in maintenance mode. The agent index tells the story. AutoGen plus 297 and semantic kernel plus 41 are both flat as developers consolidate onto the new framework.
Paper breakdown. Q+ from a team working with Agent, an open-source multi-agent system. The paper asks, what if your search agent actually planned its searches instead of freestyling them?
Most deep research agents fire queries, scan results, and hope the right evidence shows up. Q+ makes that process deliberate by adding explicit tools for query planning, progress monitoring, and evidence extraction.
3 explicit steps. Plan queries before executing them. Track what evidence has been found versus what's still missing. And extract specific facts from long web pages rather than summarizing entire documents.
The numbers. Across 4 benchmarks, Q+ improved accuracy by 0.6 to 3.8 percentage points, depending on the model backend. GPT 4.1 saw the largest gain at plus 3.8. The smaller the model, the more structured reasoning helps.
The practical gap. The paper tests on factual QA benchmarks where answers are verifiable. Real-world research involves synthesizing conflicting sources and weighing credibility. Q+ helps with finding evidence, but doesn't address evaluating it.
Still, if your agent does web research, the bottleneck probably isn't the model. It's the search strategy. Q+ is open source and pluggable.
Time saved. 6-minute read versus 42-minute paper. 7x compression.
Tool of the week. And this one is from AWS, which makes sense given the managed agents theme this week.
AWS Agent Registry, now in preview inside Bedrock AgentCore. The problem it solves. You have 50 agents across 4 teams. Nobody knows what exists. Teams rebuild capabilities that already shipped. Compliance can't track what's running.
So it's a centralized catalog for discovering, versioning, and governing AI agents across your org.
The registry stores structured metadata for every agent, tool, MCP server, and agent skill. Who published it, what protocols it implements, what it exposes, how to invoke it. Supports MCP and A2A natively, with custom schemas for org-specific resources.
2 ways to register. Manual via AWS CLI, where you specify name, resource type, protocol, description, owner, compliance status. Or auto-discovery from an MCP or A2A endpoint, where it introspects the endpoint and registers what it finds.
Discovery uses hybrid search, keyword plus semantic matching. A search for payment processing surfaces tools tagged as billing or invoicing even if named differently. And the registry is accessible as an MCP server itself. Any MCP-compatible client can query it directly, including Kiro and Claude Code.
The governance angle is what makes this enterprise ready. Approval workflows control what gets published. Compliance metadata tracks ownership, status, and usage documentation. And it indexes agents regardless of where they run. AWS, other clouds, or on-premises.
The practical gap. This is preview, not GA. No pricing announced. And there's no automated drift detection between registered metadata and actual agent behavior in production. But the concept is right. As agent sprawl becomes a real problem, you need a registry.
Think of it this way. NPM solved the package discovery problem for JavaScript. Agent Registry is trying to solve the same problem for AI agents. If you're running more than a handful of agents, you need something like this. Whether it's this specific tool or the pattern it represents.
Preview in Amazon Bedrock AgentCore, US, East 1. Worth kicking the tires if you're in the agent infrastructure space. Agent Index Update. OpenClaw added 6,622 stars this week. 356,077 total. Down from last week's plus 8,316, but still dominant.
The story this week is N8N. Plus 1,155. It broke 4 digits for the first time since we started tracking. The no-code agent builder wave is real.
Diffie at plus 1,201 had another strong week, actually outpacing N8N on absolute gains. Crew AI at plus 637 continues pulling away from Llama Index at plus 213, now leading by 223 stars.
LangGraph at plus 605 keeps outpacing parent LangChain at plus 868 on a percentage basis. 2.1% versus 0.65%. The child is growing faster than the parent. Again.
The Microsoft consolidation story is clear in the numbers. AutoGen plus 297 and Semantic Kernel plus 41 are both flat as Agent Framework 1.0 GA absorbs the developer base.
And Strands agents at plus 60 slowed after last week's best ever plus 101, settling at 5,612. Small, but still growing. Hot take time. And this one should make everyone uncomfortable.
UC Berkeley broke every major AI agent benchmark this week.
100% on SW Bench verified with a 10-line PyTest hook. 100% on Terminal Bench by Trojan and curl. Near 100% on WebArena by navigating to file URLs that read the answer key. 0 tasks solved. 0 LLM calls in most cases.
The benchmarks that companies cite in press releases, that investors use to justify valuations, that engineers use to pick models. All exploitable.
A conftest.py that rewrites every test result to passed is not a sophisticated attack. It's a packaging oversight that nobody checked for because the evaluation harness runs in the same container as the agent's code.
The fix isn't complicated. Run evaluation in a separate, hardened environment that the agent can't touch.
But the deeper problem is cultural. We've been treating benchmark scores as ground truth for capability when they're actually measuring can this system produce output that a specific grading script accepts. Those are very different things.
I think the benchmarks still have value. They measure something real. The problem is treating them as the only signal.
I disagree. If your benchmark can be beaten by 10 lines of Python, it's not measuring anything real. It's measuring whether someone bothered to check the grading pipeline. Every agent evaluation you run should now include an adversarial audit of the grading pipeline itself. If your benchmark can be beaten by a conftest hook, it's not a benchmark. It's a formality.
That's harsh, but I can't argue with the evidence. The industry needs to take evaluation security as seriously as it takes model security.
Exactly. And until that happens, take every benchmark number you see with a massive grain of salt.
That's a wrap for Issue 8 of the Agentic Engineer Podcast. Subscribe to the newsletter at theagentecengineer.waltsoft.net and follow us on YouTube at the Agentic Engineer Pod. Share it with a friend who's building with agents. We'll be back next week. Until then, keep building.